So my name's Mike Staley. You just heard my wife, Velda. I had my idea planned out for tonight, but God kind of shook it the other way. It usually works out pretty good that way for me. I kind of want to talk about brutal truth and honesty. What do you see when you look in the mirror at yourself? And for years, like in our early stages of dating and even early marriage before I got fully adapted in the life of corrections, I enjoyed who I saw. And then third shift, I worked a year to get my probation in. It wasn't too bad. Moved to second because I got on the team, a special response team, and that's where most of the guys were because that's where all the action happened was second shift. And things slowly started transitioning to I could leave it at the gate on the 8 and come home with nothing, to where things that I saw and did were starting to come home. How I had to deal with inmates were starting to come home with me. I was afflicting that on my family, my wife, and even a lot of my friends from either high school or other jobs. I kind of shoved them to the back burners and put my guys that were on the team ahead of everybody. There was one point where I knew what was going on more with the guys on the team's life than my own, and I was fine with that. Bella will tell you, when that pager went off and we got called out, it was an adrenaline rush. It was like the best drug in the world to me. I enjoyed it. I didn't know what we were going to do, but I know we were going to tear something up and tear somebody up, and I loved it. You could almost say that I started working for Satan as he started working for me in that environment, because that is one of the most negative environments in the world that you'll ever work in. It's literally 4,000 people, give or take, on prison size, of nothing but negativity, witchcraft, Satanism, sorcery, you name it, it's in there. Murders, rapists, so on and so forth. Some of the people in there that are so charismatic, they're genius. And if you don't watch it, they'll suck you right into a bait trap before you know it. But when the signal 3 alarm would go off, and that's a assistance for an officer being in an injury fight or something of that nature, I was always the first one to get there, because when that went off, I wanted my hands on somebody. I wanted to inflict damage on somebody. I got paid good to do it, and I was good at it. I mean, I knew how to write. Unfortunately, I knew how to fudge a report to benefit me to be right, even if the inmate was right and I was wrong. I would flip the report against him to show he was a pain in my butt, and I had the right to lay hands on him and put a hurting on him, and I enjoyed it. I ain't gonna lie. And then it came, I got injured. My first injury was a ballistic shield, roughly 80 pounds, solid ballistic shield. It'll stop a .223 round. And I caught it right across the bridge of the nose. I was playing inmate, and the other officer with me was playing inmate, and the team was clearing an old building, and I thought they said they couldn't find us. So I come bebopping around the corner and turn. I scared the guy with the shield, boom, right across the bridge of the nose. I mean, it blew it out. I continued to train another 7.5 hours with that. Went to the ER, and the doctor's like, "How'd you get here?" I was like, "Drove." He's like, "How long's this been broke?" I said, "Over 8 hours now." He's like, "You should have been here right away." I'm like, "Well, in real life, you can't just bail out on your guys and dip out to the hospital." So I really didn't receive narcotics at that point. My transitional problem never happened until I received my first spinal injury, and that was a pretty severe blow. I think that was around '06 roughly, the first one was. And they had put me on narcotics. I was on them for quite a while, did physical therapy, went back to work. I was on what they call a non-narcotic, but it's still addictive. A pill's a pill is a pill. And it was Tramadol, and I was taking them while I was at work because I knew I was back too soon, because my back just didn't feel right. My feet hurt wrong. Everything about it was wrong in me, and I backed off from the violence. I even went as far as not to engage in cell extractions, which is like my number one thing to do. And things went on, and then there was a inmate we were going to transport out, me and my partner, down to another institution. And Marion was built in '57, and it used to be a POW camp. And they jimmy the locks to where it sounds like it latches, but you stick a little toilet paper in there and it doesn't lock. And the inmate figured out this officer's rotation, and the officer was what we called a cell warrior. That inmate, he would talk crap through the window at him because he knew he didn't come out on his shift. Well, at that time, when I went down that range, he popped that cell door and went up range and went up to the second tier, and I caught him just at the top as he drew back to stab him with a shank, which is a homemade weapon. And he rammed me backwards, and we went over the edge about, I don't know, 15, 20 foot drop with him on top of me to concrete. I worked 4 or 5 months with my L5 pretty well gone, my L4 in pieces. My L3 was into my spinal column, and still to this day my T1's cracked. They're afraid to do surgery because it could do more harm than good. So I had surgery, but before I had surgery, BWC was fighting me on everything. It took like 6 to 8 months, maybe even a year to get my surgery approved. And they started me out on Oxycontin, fentanyl 75 mcg patches. I started out on, I think it was Oxy 20s. Took them somewhat right for the first month, but I can tell you looking back, I know the very first Oxy I ever took, I was addicted. And this was way before the forefront of Oxycontin, the epidemic we face with now. I used to take the fentanyl 75 mcg patches and suck the gel off of them as soon as I got them. At least 1 or 1.5 a day. I'd always keep one for withdrawal effect. And then, seen an old buddy I worked with at another place, and he was talking about these pill mills down in Columbus. I started hitting them up. BWC paid for like 2,500 pills or more a month. I mean, I had a candy store of litany stuff. And I kept it tight like a business for a long time. My wife, my family, they knew nothing. Valda went to work. She left the door about 7:15, 7:30. 8 o'clock, I knew she was tagged in on the bell. I went to work. 4 o'clock, I was home because she got off at 4:30. My clothes were in the dryer. They were done because addicts smoked, the majority of them, but I didn't. And I kept it that way for a long time until the later part of my addiction where I was like, I don't care if I live or die anymore. You know, my body was deteriorating. I had the Percocet itch, you know, the sores all over you from scratch or from the oxycodone. And I had a ton of pills in the back of my truck one day. And my mom, I think Velda got mom to come over, and they were going to call the cops on me. They dialed the first 6 of the area code, the 562, then they dialed 10. I ran upstairs, jacked my 9, stuck it in my mouth, and I stood there. I said, dial them last 2, I'll splatter my brains all over these walls. I said, you'll live with it because you made it happen. That's the kind of fear I ruled with in my house. If you didn't like what I said, get out the door. I told her, you don't like it? Leave, because I ain't going nowhere. And it got so bad, it sounds crazy. I got as high as I could a lot of times and thought my heart hurt so bad when I went to bed. Not from the pain I was causing, but literally hurt from the amount of drugs in my system. I thought I would go to sleep, have a heart attack, and just not wake up. I'd wake up like 3 or 4 o'clock the next day. I'm like, man, I can't even off myself this way. I had such a high tolerance that what kills most people now, I couldn't, there was like I had no limit. I know looking back now, that was a God thing because he was keeping me alive for a reason. Because what I took 120 Oxy 80s one time and never OD'd, just slept like a baby through the night, got up the next day, felt hungover. That should have killed at least half a city block of people. And then towards the end, I got lit, and this sounds crazy because I couldn't get help. My union said that my drug addiction was not their problem, even though I got hurt within the union that I worked for. And then BWC said they had no issue with it, even though they paid for all the bills. All these doctors were theirs. I mean, yeah, I was doing illegal stuff on the street, but I finally figured the rehabs at that time were $4,000 a day or insurance. I had neither one of them. So I took my 9 and I got lit and I made peace with my 2 pits. That sounds weird, but they went everywhere with me. They were my kids. I went down way deep in the woods behind my house where like no family would find me. I stuck the 9 underneath my mouth. I don't know how long I was there. It felt like an eternity. It could have been seconds. I pulled the trigger. It dry fired. Yeah, there was one in it, and that gun never dry fired. I have shot that gun many, many times. So I dropped to my knees, and at that point I just cried out to God, what do you want me to do? So the only thing I could think was get a hold of my family physician, which he delivered me. I grew up playing basketball with his son all through school, played out their house sometimes on Sundays after the afternoon hours. And I went to him, I'm like, Doc, I said, I'm a drug addict, man. I said, I need something to get me to stop taking these. And he's like, there's nothing I can do. You got to do rehab. So Velda was at work at the time. Mom and Dad just lived down the road from the doctor's office, so I strolled on up in there, go inside, and Dad was at work, I think, and Mom was sitting there. I said, hey, I need help. I'm a drug addict. Mom goes, yeah, we're taking you playing your funeral this week. She goes, you're barely alive now. I thought I looked good. I thought I had everything held together. But I never let my picture be taken much back in the past during my addiction. I always used it as a security issue thing. I didn't want my picture anywhere floating. And it wasn't so much that, it was the fact that somewhere deep inside I knew I looked bad. And finally I got help, to which I went to West Palm Beach, Florida. An out-of-state law enforcement agency paid for me to go. And while I was down there, I thought I had an out-of-body experience or a seizure. And actually, I don't know if it was Satan taking me for a ride, because he knew he was losing me at that point. And where I went to was I was there, but I went back and I seen everything I did to people. And then he showed me how much more I could have if I just stayed with him. That I could have so much more at my hand next to him than I would any other way. And my wife's only request when I come home was to see her and Heidi's pastor, which was Pastor Bernie France. I went in there and told him every curse word I could of what he wasn't going to tell me. And then when he said he's a former addiction addict, I sat down and I went, what? Because I came up Catholic, where the priest does no wrong. So I've been at Pastor Danny's and Pastor Bess for, I don't know, 6, 7 years maybe. Danny's taken me on a few trips with him. I know I had a bad mouth when we first started going. He about got me hit in the middle of the road when he said go, but if it wasn't for this church and the people here, I'm telling you, if you think you can do it on your own, you really can't. I mean, you can do everything that a doctor wants you to do, but the doctor's job is to keep you coming back. They don't care about your health necessarily. They just care about that money that they're getting out of you. It doesn't matter if it's a mental illness. I suffered from PTSD, depression, anxiety. I was even antisocial there for a while because I just hated people because of the job I did. If you really want to be let go and be free, you have to come to a church where they accept you for who you are. It's not based on how much money you make, how you look, what your problem is or isn't. It's a church of people that love you, that are true Christians, that you can come up to this altar, lay it down, have a pastor like Danny come up and lay there with you, lay hands on you, and have people from that congregation that suffered from the same things you did and come up here and give you hope and help. And they'll continue to do it, whether it's inside these walls on a Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. It's 7 days a week for a lot of these people to reach out to help you keep going. It's not just a part-time job, especially for the pastor and his wife. They're dedicated to what they do here. I don't think people really realize what an on-taking they have done with this project and everything they do here. But I just want to give Pastor Danny and Miss Beth the biggest congratulations and love and respect